So, all right, first up today, something that is right in my wheelhouse. One might say it's my beat. Second whistleblower dies suddenly. So, I heard actually Discovery Channel to add to their lineup of dangerous jobs, ice road truckers, ice fishing. They're going to add Boeing whistleblower. It's going to be
Yeah,
a whole show of Boeing whistleblowers trying not to die by the end of the season.
makes sense mathematically.
Mathematically, the ice road truckers ain't got nothing on these guys.
Yeah.
A former quality auditor at Boeing supplier Spirit Aerosystems, who turned whistleblower, has died after a sudden illness, his family announced on Tuesday. Funny how that happens. Joshua Dean has accused Spirit of ignoring defects in the production of the 737 MAX, a series whose reputation has been marred by a series of crashes and safety issues in recent years. Dean is the second Boeing whistleblower to die suddenly after John Barnett was found dead less than 2 months ago. According to South Carolina authorities, Bennett died of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, although they are in the habit of using air quotes whenever claiming that.
It's funny, this is like, it reminds me of 9/11, where remember when the first plane hit the first tower, we were all thinking, wow, that could be an accident, but it doesn't look like an accident, right? Could that be an accident? I guess maybe. And then when the second plane hit, everybody knew, okay, this is not an accident. That's like what this
Yeah.
reminds me of.
So basically, Dean is the second plane.
He's
Joshua
the second
Dean is
plane.
the second plane
He's the South
of
Tower.
Boeing whistleblowers.
Yes, the South Tower of Boeing whistleblowers, right? That was the second one, I think.
Yes, I think so. But I'm already purging everything I ever learned to do tour guiding. I never did 9/11 a lot because I always hated it. I always hated that. It
Well,
always
most
felt
New Yorkers do hate
it always
9/11.
felt dirt.
It was not one of the better days in the history of the city.
I just hated doing that tour. It felt dirty. It felt dirty. It felt like people are there to gawk in a way. And then even at the same time, on the other side, this I'm proud to be an American. You'd get a lot of that shit too. Like either way, I just was not into doing that tour. So I forget what I knew. Dean's death is likely to again draw attention to Boeing, which has been under increased scrutiny from regulators and airlines since an emergency exit door blew off a Boeing 737 MAX in midair in January after it took off from Portland International Airport. Since then, further negative headlines for Boeing linked to safety issues have harmed its reputation, to the point that a majority of Americans would pay more to avoid flying on its aircraft, according to a recent poll. More on that later. Newsweek contacted Spirit and Boeing for comment by email early on Thursday. Dean, then a quality auditor at Spirit, had flagged lax standards and the presence of an excessive amount of defects at a Boeing manufacturing plant in Wichita, Kansas, back in October 2022, according to a December 2023 lawsuit mentioned by NPR in January. A mechanical engineer with years of experience, Dean had initially been employed by Spirit between March 2019 and May 2020, when he was among the many staffers being let go by the company during mass layoffs, according to the lawsuit. He returned to Spirit in late May 2021 as a product and process verification core quality auditor. He later became a level 2 stress engineer until his contract was terminated by the company in late April 2023. In October 2022, he flagged what he said were serious manufacturing defects to management, but said that nothing was done. According to the lawsuit, Spirit concealed the issues flagged by Dean from investors until they were revealed by independent reporting in August 2023, 10 months later. The whistleblower claimed that the company had fired him in retaliation for flagging the defects at the Wichita plant using a false justification. The failure to spot a manufacturing flaw in the fittings that attached the vertical tail fin to the fuselage during an audit as a pretext to scapegoat and silence him, the lawsuit reads. Dean had also fired a complaint against Spirit with the FAA, accusing the company of serious and gross misconduct by senior quality management of the 737 production line at the manufacturer. The investigation concluded that Dean's allegations had substance, but did not provide further details. Dean's sudden death at the age of 45 was announced by his aunt and sister on social media on Tuesday. His mother wrote on Facebook that he had contracted pneumonia in April and suffered a stroke following an MSRA infection. The Seattle Times wrote that Dean had been in good health and was noted for having a healthy lifestyle, but had died after contracting a sudden, fast-spreading infection. Barnett, that's the previous whistleblower, was found dead in an apparent suicide in March in the midst of giving depositions against Boeing, alleging that the company retaliated against him for exposing safety issues with the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. An investigation into his death is still ongoing. Now, this is a writer, reporter, blogger put together a little supplementary material on this, Champagne Joshi. I'm sure this is just yet another unfortunate, highly statistically improbable coincidence. It's a real shame because now this guy can no longer expose the manufacturing defects on the 737 MAX. From February 5th, 2024, this is from NPR. At the factory in Wichita, Kansas, where Spirit Aerosystems builds the fuselage for the Boeing 737 MAX, management would sometimes throw a pizza party to celebrate a drop in the number of problems reported on the line. But Joshua Dean says many of the workers knew something was off. We're having a pizza party because we're lowering defects, said Dean, a former quality auditor at the factory, but we're not lowering defects. We just ain't reporting them. You know what I mean? Dean wouldn't shut up about the defects he was finding, and his persistence ended with being rewarded by being fired. In less than 6 months, Dean, 45, dies suddenly from a mysterious illness, bacterial infection. Okay, so we got to be a little careful how we talk about this, I suppose. The suicide, in air quotes, the self-deletion of Barnett is highly suspicious, right? Now, if you've ever read the biography of the Iceman, the notorious mafia hitman / serial killer, he talks about the way he would kill people with poisons you've never heard of, man, where he would from a spray bottle give people a heart attack. So, hey, man, if you assume that the death of Barnett is suspicious and you accept that maybe Boeing might have had a hand in that, well, it's not that much of a stretch with, a multi-billion-dollar company to think that they might have access to the kind of people who can make things look like a fast-acting disease. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Certainly is suspicious. I mean, 2 out of 3 now. You're talking about 2 out of 3 whistleblowers this year have died suddenly. It is strange. It is possible, though, and I'm starting to think because, you talk about circumstances lining up. What if God really does love America? What if God really does bless America? And what if he doesn't like people fucking with America?
Yeah.
That's a possibility. He just doesn't want people out there fucking with America. Fuck yeah! Yeah, he doesn't want people fucking with American corporations, doesn't want people fucking with the American military, doesn't want people fucking with American churches or American presidents. Maybe God really does love America, and maybe God's we really on our side. Maybe we are the damned. Maybe we are the evil ones after all. Doesn't seem like we are, but then again, most bad guys don't think of themselves as bad guys. So maybe we are the villains. Maybe God just does Boeing these favors, and maybe they didn't do anything. Maybe God is rewarding them for their great work, and maybe we're on the wrong side of history. You ever think about that? The thought just occurred to me because so many of these breaks seem to go against us and for the empire. So maybe this really is the shining city on the hill.
Um,
And with that, we're going to welcome our guest, Professor. I'm just kidding.
The principle of Occam's razor.
Yeah.
That the simplest explanation is probably the best.
Yeah.
So you could take a roundabout route to coming to the conclusion that God really likes America, or you could come to the conclusion that multi-billion-dollar corporations are not above eliminating the competition, so to speak.
50-50.
Okay, so this is kind of fun.
50-50.
Americans will pay more to avoid Boeing. They mentioned that in the article, so I went and looked it up. Okay, so a poll involving 1,000 U.S. adults who flew commercially in the past 2 years, commissioned by casinos.us and distributed by Pollfish, found that 50.22% of American flyers would pay between $50 and $150 more for tickets on aircraft they view as safer than Boeing's. Another 23.74% would pay less than $50, while 19.06% would pay between $151 and $250. That's a lot of fucking money, man. That's almost 1 in 5 say they would pay over $150 not to fly on a Boeing. Now, we've pretty well covered this, and I've mentioned my default now, so I don't have to fuck around with looking up which flight number corresponds to what model airplane, which they can swap out in the end. They could swap. You could try to take an Airbus, and they could swap to a Boeing if it doesn't work out in their schedule. So at this point, for domestic travel, I'm only booking JetBlue because they only have Airbus. And this is not to be construed as financial advice, but they just had a weak quarter. And it doesn't seem like anyone's seeing the big picture that this is the one airline, I believe the one airline of its size. Maybe a few regional carriers have only Airbuses, but it's the only one that pretty much goes anywhere you'd want to go that only has Airbuses. So again, not to be construed as financial advice, but I am going to start to build a small position in JetBlue because I think they are going to benefit from the horror and tragedy that, knock on wood, maybe won't come. But it seems like with this level of malfeasance and this many planes that have been built under this regime in the air, I can't imagine that that's not going to come to tragic ends.
Yes.
At which point, you got now. None of these situations since the Maxes, the 2 Maxes that went down, but none of the recent spate of engines catching on fire and ramps falling off the plane, none of these have led to deaths. And you still have half of people, more than half, saying in that poll, was it something like 3/4 would pay more not to fly a Boeing? What's going to happen once one goes down?
Oh, of course.
Everyone's going to be scrambling to find out, how do you only fly on Airbus? And they're going to find JetBlue.
Please clap.